Thanks for joining us today for this week's Friday Focus. Welcome back to those of you who have attended a Friday Focus talk before. We've been on a break for the past 2 months, for the month of July and August from our weekly talk programme, but we are really excited to kind of get back up and running with it, and we've got talks booked all the way through at the moment till February of next year, but they of course will continue into 2024 as well. So thank you for joining us this afternoon. Today we are joined by exhibition development course student Anna Wray, who is going to be talking to us about our current exhibition, What's Bugging Glasgow, which is on at Kelvin Hall in the West End of Glasgow. And we're joined, of course, by our Curator of Entomology, Jeanne. So Anna and Jeanne are just going to be telling us a wee bit about how the exhibition actually came to be, how it came together, and they're going to be telling us a bit as well about the actual insects that are on display. Of course, we've got Jeanne here for that expertise. So today's talk is going to be a bit more conversational. So if you've attended our Friday Focus talks before, you'll know that quite a lot of the time they're kind of more run as like a presentation style, but for our first one back after the summer, we kind of wanted to try out just like a bit of a conversation with Jeanne and Anna. So Anna, I understand that it's 8 o'clock in the morning where you are just now.
Yeah.
And Anna actually will have to run off. Will actually have to run to work. And is it the Children's Museum of Atlanta?
Yeah.
And you're starting there at 9 o'clock today, so we'll make sure we don't run on past half past 8 for you, Anna, and 1:30 for us. So don't worry about that. But just to kind of get us started, I think Anna, it would be really good to hear from you just a wee bit about the course and like the master's program that you were on, and how kind of the exhibition came to be, or how your proposal came to be for this exhibition.
Okay. So I got my master's degree in museum studies, and this was a part of the exhibition development course. And so a group of my fellow classmates and I took the class, and they kind of like the whole class was to learn how to develop and execute an exhibition. And so they split us up into 5 groups, and in our groups we would look at the Hunterian's collection and try to develop an exhibition off of it. But also during the time in 2022, Scotland Year of the Stories was going on. And so we had to curate an exhibition to kind of like go along with that. And so my group, we wanted to really focus on Scotland's stories reflecting who we are and how we shape others, how others shape us. And so we kind of noticed that the Hunterian had a wide insect collection. And so we thought we could use that to create an exhibition to go along with Scotland Years of Stories.
So was that the main guidance you were given, Anna, for the exhibition, for what kind of collection to use? Was the main guidance, we want you to tie into Scotland's Year of Stories theme? So did your group kind of entirely decide just through discussion that you wanted it to the focus to be entomology, or was there any outline beforehand about what audience it was going to be? Like, you knew it was going to be in Kelvin Hall, didn't you? Because it could have potentially been in the museum or the art gallery, but you knew it was going to be in Kelvin Hall.
No, we didn't know it was going to be in Kelvin Hall.
Okay.
Usually they only pick one group out of the 5 to put an exhibition on in the Hunterian on campus. And so like we didn't even know our group was going to be chosen. We did the whole course, we presented it to the Hunterian staff, and then they chose oh gosh, the one that's on display in the Hunterian.
Pecans.
And then
it was pecans. Yeah.
And then we got like feedback that our display was going to be in the Calvin Grove, which was really exciting.
Yeah, that must have been quite exciting to find that out, especially if you weren't entirely sure, like if it was actually going to come to fruition or not. Like that must have been quite a fun moment, like for your group.
Yeah.
The committee were so impressed by the proposal that it was decided that we would put 2 exhibitions on from that cohort. So that is an unusual scenario.
Of course, no, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
And so how did you end up coming up with the theme of, there's a real like climate aspect to this exhibition as well? Like, was that just through kind of like discussion, like with your classmates? Like, was Jeanne involved at this stage in the conversation as well, or?
I think because Glasgow just had the huge climate conference in 2022.
COP26, yeah.
And so it was like really in the back of our minds. And we kind of noticed this theme as we were doing research that, oh, like insects and entomology are like really important to our local ecosystems. And then I think Jeanne was a part of the discussion early on because none of us were we didn't have a lot of education in entomology. So we knew that we needed to like bring Jeanne in quite early in the process.
Yeah, that makes sense. And can you tell us then what specific kind of species or specimens, sorry, that you picked for the exhibition?
Yeah, so we picked let me find it. So we picked 8 pieces from the collection, and most of them, like, we wanted to like have a good range of like species that you are like native to Glasgow, but also species that have come in to Glasgow and like migrated there. So we really focused on like invasive species. That's what I meant. So we picked quite a few, like we picked like a bumblebee tray, and we like really wanted to focus on bumblebees and pollinators to like show how important they are. And then we picked the deathhead hawk moth. And then because that was an invasive species. And then we also picked a common hawker dragonfly to show like the aquatic side of the species in the local area. And then we picked also like an insect tray to show specimens from around the world that ended up in Glasgow. And then we had like a few, or like we also picked the door beetle, which is like a dung beetle, and that was like our focus to try and be like, oh, we want to change perspective on insects, because like you hear of like a dung beetle and you're like, that's really gross and disgusting, but they actually are really important to our ecosystem. So we picked quite a few.
I'm sure you've probably learned like a lot of stuff about insects and bugs that is maybe information that you didn't think you'd maybe end up learning, like I can imagine, from putting this together.
Yeah, I never really thought, even like we wanted to change perspective on insects, and I feel like it really changed my perspective because I'm a part of like the group who was like, oh no, I don't want anything to do with it. Like I don't want them in my space. I don't want them. But they're like they are really important to our environment in our spaces. And then like how invasive species come into our country is like and how they change our environment is really important. And yeah, I just learned a lot, and I have a deep appreciation for insects now.
So about Jeanne's doing like a cheer. So Anna, can you tell us about the exhibition kind of coming together? Was it a group of, did you say, was it 5 of you? Was it a larger group than that?
It was a group of 4 of us.
4 of you. And so
yeah,
did you all take on different roles in the exhibition planning? Was that kind of organized in advance? Did you plan that out amongst yourselves, or did you all take on a similar just kind of team working role?
So in the beginning, like before we were put into groups, we wanted to choose what kind of role we wanted to do. And so I wanted to learn how to be an exhibition manager. So that's like the section I chose. And then like other members in my group wanted to be like collection managers and like research and education. And so we went into our group thinking, oh, this is the role I'm going to do. And then we're going to like work together and put it together. But by the end of the project, we ended up like doing the work together. Like our roles kind of like, I don't want to say dispersed or went away, because they were still there. But we found that it was easier for us to like get together, work on a task together, and continue our tasks together. So we knew like it would just made it easier to have like the connection and to have the exhibition be more cohesive, because we all knew what was going on and we knew the planning that went into it.
Absolutely. Anna, was there anything that came up, Anna, that maybe you hadn't thought about before, like any hurdles or, you know, restrictions in terms of like, you know, the practicalities of the exhibition? You know, I know we have to be careful with like lighting levels depending on what we have on display, and, you know, making sure the actual like collection is safe. Was there anything that kind of came up in the process of putting together the exhibition that you hadn't expected, or that caused, you know, any kind of hurdles to jump over?
The first thing that comes to mind is we were kind of shocked how hard it was to pick the stuff that goes into the collection, because the Hunterian has like such a wide variety of like insects collections, but like ours is such like Glasgow and Scottish based. We wanted to focus on those insects, and we wanted to like change the perspective of insects, and but also incorporate how they're like climate change. So it was really hard for us to like even choose 8 objects to go into the exhibition. And then I remember having a discussion about how like delicate the specimens are. So we're like, how do we display them? Can we take them out of the trays? Because we don't want to like damage the specimens at all.
Yeah, I can imagine that would have been like slightly nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
And so Jeanne, your part kind of like coming into the exhibition, so the proposal was submitted and like accepted, and then I understand, you know, Anna and her classmates kind of would have graduated in that period before the exhibition went on display, or maybe like during the process, or the exhibition was, you know, being put together and kind of built like during kind of like your graduation, Anna, I think, like timeline wise.
It was even more delayed than that, because we'd only planned to have the one exhibition, but everybody had liked the idea of the insect one so much that we decided we'd fit it into the programme. But the next gap that arose in the programme was after Anna and Rory and her other teammates had already left. So it was a bit of a tag team affair. I mean, I have to say, it was a really exciting opportunity, because entomology often plays a role in multidisciplinary exhibitions, but this is the first entirely entomological exhibition that we've put on since I started with the Hunterian about 8 years ago. And it's a perfect size space for it that we found in Kelvin Hall. And I think the way that Anna and her team had targeted at families also suits it to that space really beautifully. But what's brilliant, of course, about the insect display is that each of the objects is so tiny but can tell such massive stories. So through their brilliantly selected themes, we actually cover a lot of ground in just those 3 short cases. So yeah, that was a total delight.
No, that must have been exciting, Jeanne. Jeanne, are you able to show us, you know, some of the image? I know that you've got some really great close-up images of the insects on display. Would you be able to, you know, kind of walk us through them on the screen and tell us about, you know, a bit about each insect that we do have that is in the exhibition?
I thought you'd never ask, Rachel.
You've been waiting for this moment.
So for those of you that haven't made it into the space yet, I'm going to do it just on a case-by-case basis and just highlight a couple of the object groups, just to show things off for you. So this is the introductory panel. The whole essence of it is that Glasgow has over 3,000 species of insects recorded. There's certainly more than that out there, but that's how many we know are definitely present. But insects have had a real kicking environmentally. There's been 60% declines in the last 20 odd years. We know that it's been measured. It's devastating on both a global and a national level. Insects are like the canaries in the coal mine. They're incredibly sensitive to environmental change, and we need to heed those changes because it's telling us about issues in our environment. And this is probably, the changing perceptions is a topic I am so glad that Anna and her team brought up, because it's an important reminder to everybody. A lot of people's sole thoughts of insects is them as a pest and nuisance, and it was important that we address that. So in this case, in terms of busting perceptions, we've got these hoverflies. You'll see them as they feature in the case on their bramble backgrounds. You'll commonly see them on brambles. Hoverflies are harmless species that often look like bees and wasps, and this of course protects them from visual predators that think they can sting them, but perhaps also changes the way that human beings react to them. And they're hugely important pollinators, and flies pollinate in colder places where and with less rewarding plants than bees do. The one at the bottom is a hornet hoverfly. It's got a slight problem in that it basically looks like a species that isn't even found in Glasgow yet. So hornets aren't here, but the hornet hoverfly was first recorded here in 2018. Also in that case, we've got these incredible species. Anna and her team picked the wood wasp because they have what looks like a terrifying stinger. But this is totally, both these species are totally harmless. The one on the top left, the black and yellow one, is a wood wasp whose larvae eat wood, as you would think, and what appears to be a stinger is an egg-laying tube that it uses to inject its eggs into the wood. Basically, all stingers in the bees and wasps were once egg-laying tubes in evolution, and some of them have evolved to deliver venom, but these species can't do that. The species on the right is the parasite of the larvae of the wood wasp. You'll see its egg-laying tube is even longer because it has to get through to wherever the larvae's been laid in the wood and lay its egg in the larvae. And these species are important, both the wood wasp for helping decompose wood, and everybody hates the bit where the predators and the parasites come in wildlife documentaries, but ecologically, these species are immensely important because they help control populations, and most importantly, they usually control the dominant species, the thing there's the most of, and that provides opportunity for the less competitive species to also live there. So they help boost biodiversity and make the world nicer for the species that are left. So that takes us on to the second case. Climate change is a massively important issue, and one that entomology can tell us a lot about. So within this case, we've got the drawer that Anna mentioned. I love this drawer. So this is things that have come into the Hunterian collections over the centuries, things that have come in through agriculture on the left-hand side. In the middle, you've got things that have turned up by all a variety of means, or their origins are uncertain. And on the right-hand side, you've got some interesting things that have been imported in timber. Insects are fantastic travellers, and they're very good at exploiting our travel as well, travelling in our imports and exports, as well as covering huge distances on their wings alone. In this case, we tried to pick some bigger specimens so people wouldn't struggle to see them. They certainly wouldn't struggle to see the death's head hawk moth. It's pretty chunky, as is its larvae. That's about the size of a Havanan cigar if you wanted something as an indicator, and that's the caterpillar, the larvae on the side there stood in its stick. These have actually been recorded in Glasgow about 8 times historically. Only the adults have managed to fly here. They actually fly up as far as Shetland, coming over from North Africa and from the Mediterranean, and they're occasional kind of potato pests. Certainly, one of the things that's discussed here is how their migrations are likely to become larger and more common. At the moment, they can't breed here. The larvae have only been recorded in the south of England, but there's also a chance that with the changing climate, things will become more hospitable for them. That takes us on to the final case. And in here, we kind of highlighted two important issues. And one of those was, aside from climate change, the aspects of urbanisation and increased pollution that are posing massive issues for not just our insects, but for ourselves. But also we wanted to not leave everybody feeling totally depressed. And one of the things is, not only are insects hugely responsive to negative changes in the environment, they're also very positive. They respond very easily to positive changes. So we should feel empowered in that way to do things. And you'll see that virtually all the changes are suggested are not just good for insects, they're good for all organisms. So it's looking after our own self-interest and making things better for the insects along the way. So here we see a hawker dragonfly and the cast skin of its larvae. So the adult would have emerged out of this skin when the larvae had dragged itself out of the water and flown off to look for tasty bugs to eat and to find nice places to lay its eggs for its aquatic babies. Of course, they have this aquatic larval stage and they're incredibly sensitive to pollution. And I was a bit horrified to discover that the Clyde apparently is one of the most polluted waters rivers in Britain. In recent surveys, it's certainly been found to be one of the highest in terms of pharmaceuticals. So it looks quite clean now, say, compared to its industrial past. And there's certainly improvements in the species that are found there. But what its aquatic insect life tells us is that there are still some major issues. In addition to kind of runoff from our domestic and agricultural waste and all the other things, another major issue for aquatic insects, and something else that we've highlighted in this case, is flea treatments. It used to be that these insecticides were mostly from agricultural use, but they've been banned there. But we still use insecticides regularly to keep fleas and other insects suppressed in our pets. And basically the treatment to keep fleas off a dog is sufficient to kill millions of bees. And this stuff runs off into our waterways and is causing serious problems for insects in both survival and breeding. And of course, that means less for all the things that usually rely on them as food to benefit from as well. Another interesting thing with pollution is that we know that pollinators are very sensitive to pollution. Herbicides, fungicides, and insecticides are certainly amongst those. They live for a long time in combs like this. This is a wild comb that was found in Kelvindale, but in the wax, the pesticides accumulate. They might drift onto it directly, or they're brought back by the foraging bees. And effectively, each of those cells is a bee nursery. So the young are getting exposed to it from the very offset. And the pesticides, even if they aren't numerous enough to kill the bees, affect their ability to forage, affect their ability to pollinate, and affect their ability to rear young and survive. So that was an important one for illustrating pollution. I just wanted to finish on this one because I think the most important issue, and the one that was brought to the fore, is the need to share the bug love. Insects do perform hugely important services for us, cleaning up our poo and dead creatures, pollinating all the food that we eat, and basically providing a food source for so many things above them in that level. And they make the world so much more beautiful and interesting and fascinating as well. If we're handicapped by our fear of them, then we might fail to recognise all the great things that they do. And I love these two particular shots in highlighting just the joy that insects can bring.
Thank you. Thanks so much. And they are great. They're great photos. Although I don't know if I'd want to get quite that close, but no, they're wonderful photos. Thanks, Jeanne. And thanks so much for sharing all the information as well about, all the insects that are on the display. If you haven't been to Kelvin Hall, and you're able to, you should really take a visit. The exhibition is in like the Kelvin Hall Avenue, so you'll just need to go through the front door and just walk down a wee bit, and you'll come across it. It really is a gorgeous display. And yeah, so thank you everyone today for coming. If anyone has any questions, you're welcome to just take yourself off mute. We don't have a question in the chat, but we do have a comment from Ruth, who's our education manager, who has said here that it's been wonderful to see the level of engagement and fascination of children looking at this display in Kelvin Hall. As education manager, this is so important to me. So thanks to the student team and Hunterian colleagues for reaching our younger visitors.
Yeah, what Anna can't see is that there's loads of brilliant little snotty fingerprints all on the bottom of the cases, and that's a really, really promising sign.
Yeah, no, I've noticed that every day. Every second day there'll be a toddler with their hands like smeared up against it. Which it's great to see. There's a few more comments in the chat here as well, Anna, which you should take a look at there. Some nice comments. So thanks so much, Anna, for giving up your time today as well. All the way from the States with a 6 hour time difference, 6 hour time difference. I think you're doing maths. 5. 5. So thanks so much. I think it's really cool for us to hear the work that students are doing at the Hunterian, like behind the scenes, because obviously the general public don't really get to see so much of that until it's the actual final output. But it's brilliant to see your exhibition on display, and I'm sorry that you haven't been able to see it yourself, but I'm sure it's nice for you to see all the photos of it now that it's really come together.
Yeah, so oh, sorry.
No, are you hoping to make a visit?
I was gonna say, hopefully I'll make it before it goes away.
Okay, great. No, you should if you can. If there are decently priced flights to Glasgow, Anna, it would be great if you could come out. It'd be great to see you.